Brother Larry, I actually need one of those questions, so I know which one we're on. Thank you. Did everybody get a copy that wanted one? I will say this while you're turning there. If you're looking for a way to have a better prayer life, there's 100 different ways you could do it, obviously. But I will say this. I used to struggle. Everybody struggles from time to time with their prayer life. But I will say this. One way that I found the best habit of creating a good prayer life is in the car for me. Because sometimes when I would be at home and I would try and say, oh, I forgot this. Or, I'd get up and go do that and then just kind of lose my train of thought. Well, one thing that really helps me is driving. Maybe that's why God has me drive 30 minutes to work either way, But in the car, it's like all I can do is focus on driving. And I do like music and all that. I'll listen to Christian music and so forth. But I'll start with praying. And I'll pray, 6, 7, 8 minutes. I don't time it. I can just pray. But when I'm sitting driving and I can just sitting there like, okay. And then I kind of in my mind like picture like, okay, I want to pray for the teen class. I want to pray for our children. Okay, I want to pray for Trevor. Stephanie, and I like kind of go through in my head like each part of the auditorium and kind of think that. So I don't know, maybe that'll help you if you're ever in a car alone and you're driving 20 or 30 minutes and you're like, I could either listen to music or I can pray a little bit. So I know it helps me. So okay, we're in Proverbs chapter 19. Been going through the whole book. I only did one chapter tonight because there's kind of a lot in this chapter that I wanted to spend a little bit more time, doing there. So we're just going to read verse by verse and answer some questions as we go here. Proverbs chapter 19, verse number 1. As a reminder, Solomon wrote this, most of it, and has his son in mind who he's writing to. All right, verse number 1. It says, "Better is the poor that walketh in his integrity than he that is perverse in his lips and is a fool. Also, that the soul be without knowledge, it is not good, and he that hasteth with his feet sinneth. The foolishness of man perverteth his way, and his heart fretteth against the Lord." So, question number 1 comes from verse 1 through 3. The foolishness of man does what? Comes from verse 3. Perverts his way. And that's not a sexual reference. It's saying he messes up his own way, right? So, the foolishness of man does what? Messes up his way. Let me ask you guys this. Has your life plan ever gone crashing down, right? The plans you make and then they come crashing down. Now sometimes it's because your plan doesn't align with God's and God says, no, I have something different for you. But sometimes it's because we sabotage ourselves. Not meaning to, right? We sabotage ourselves because we do, make wrong decisions or do things that we know we shouldn't, you know what I mean, or whatever. And I've said this before, but it cracks me up when people want to blame God for everything. It's like, thank God for everything, that's great, but don't blame God for things that go bad in your life, And I've used this example before, that you wake up late, and then you're flying down the road, and then you get a speeding ticket, and then you're like, why, God, why? God's like, do you remember when you hit snooze 17 times on your phone when it was going off? Like, that was your fault, that wasn't God's fault, okay? So, I just think that verse really applies there. Okay, let's do verse 4. It says, "Wealth maketh many friends, but the poor is separated from his neighbor." Now, when it says wealth maketh many friends, he's speaking in generalities there. Remember, the book of Proverbs is about general things to live by, not doctrinal things per se, okay? Now, here's what that means. Because if you're wealthy, you will have more friends than if you're poor. You will. Now, it doesn't mean they're true friends. And I know the word friend, they may not be real friends, okay? But he's making a point here saying that if you're poor, not many people are going to want to be around you, right? Whereas if you're wealthy, people are going to be around you. Okay, that's kind of... Now think of the prodigal son, right? When he had all his father's inheritance, he had all these people around him, and as soon as he wasted it, he didn't have anybody anymore. Okay? Now, I just want to make that clear that he's not talking about true friends. He's just saying, you'll have people around you. Verse 5. A false witness shall not be unpunished, and he that speaketh lies shall not escape. Many will entreat the favor of the prince, and every man is a friend to him that giveth gifts. All the brethren of the poor do hate him. How much more do his friends go far from him? He pursueth them with words, yet they are wanting to him. Verse 8, he that getteth wisdom loveth his own soul. He that keepeth understanding shall find good. Okay, let's stop there. Question number 2. If you love your own soul, you will do what? Get wisdom. Yeah. Get wisdom. Listen, if you say, I want to be a good basketball player, right? What are you going to do? Not only practice, but you're going to learn. You're going to learn the rules of the game. You're going to learn strategy. You're going to learn. If you want to be a good, baseball player or whatever, a good teacher, right? Good teacher. You want to learn how to be a good teacher. If you want to be good with money, right? Then learn how to be good with money. If you want to be good in, your spiritual life, what do you think you should do? Get knowledge of the Word of God, right? Man, sorry. I promise I do not have a fever or anything, and I was negative. I promise, because I made sure, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't getting, and I even asked the nurse at school, okay, I'm just reiterating, because I don't want anybody to think I came bringing all my germs, but I asked her, she said, no, you're fine. I know, and that's what the nurse said. The nurse said there's some people who have it for 3 weeks or more. And I said, 3 weeks? My goodness. So, yeah, so I should say pray for me that I can get, not have this for 3 weeks. So I sound like every time I go to laugh, I cough, Got that. Yeah, right? Okay, so anyways, you want to get wisdom. And here's the point. If you want to be good at something, you're going to take time and effort to put in learning it and practicing it. And so when you have Christians who claim to want to live for God, and when I say claim, I know some people have a good intention and they just, the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. I know that. But sometimes people talk a big game with no intention of following it through. And I could name people who all through my life are like, they say all the right things and then you don't see them at church for 6 years, and you're, okay, so that's fine, But I'm just saying, if you love your own soul, you're going to get wisdom. And where does wisdom come from? God and His Word. Okay? All right, verse 9. A false witness shall not be unpunished, and he that speaketh lies shall perish. Now let's go to question 3. This is a repeat of which verse? Did you guys notice this was kind of repeated? What verse? Did you catch it? Verse 5, yeah. So, what will happen to a false witness? They'll be punished. They'll be punished. You see that in verse 5 where it says a false witness shall not be unpunished? Verse 9, a false witness shall not be unpunished. So, Solomon here, it's pretty clear. He doesn't like liars. And none of us do. But guess what? Who in here could raise their hand and say, I've never told a lie? Right? I wish I could say, I try not to. I don't think I've lied in, X number of years, but I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, we've all lied, right? And so I think it's funny here how quick he is. Now, if you have your Bibles, question 4 says, what does Revelation 21:8 say about liars? So hold your spot here in Proverbs and go to the very last book of the Bible. And I'm going to make a gospel point here, okay? If everybody wants to say in your head, gospel point. Okay, Revelation chapter 21, verse 8. Give everybody a minute to turn there. It's the very last book of the Bible. Second to last chapter. All right, Revelation 21, verse 8. Here's what it says. But the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Now, here's my gospel point, all right? My gospel point is this. You reach a lot of people who think they're good enough to go to heaven. Because in our eyes, they're good people, right? They're like, oh, yeah, you're a good guy. Oh, you're a good woman. Like, you're good people. But in God's eyes, lying, he puts in the same verse as murderer. You know what I mean? And so in our mind, people are like, oh, I've never killed anybody. I'm pretty good. And I think it's interesting that if you're ever talking to somebody and they don't think they're that bad of a person, and I know we want to tell people they're not terrible, but the gospel, they need to understand that they are a fallen sinner in front of a holy God. And I love the fact that lying is talked about in such a way that lets us know, yeah, that's because we've all lied, right? Like, I hope you've never killed anybody, okay? Unless you're in the military or something. I don't want to, Well, in Proverbs he is, but in Revelation it's all liars unless you've been covered by the blood of Christ. So yes, we should absolutely not make a lifestyle out of lying. It's very important not to be a liar, 100%. But my gospel point is, if somebody's hung up on the fact that really, I'm going to go to hell if I don't accept Jesus, I'm a pretty good guy. Are you a liar? Well, you deserve hell. You just do, So that's the gospel point. Now to the practical application, these are, again, that's why I say Proverbs is not doctrinal. It's more just words to live by, okay? Because it's not a doctrinal book on how to get to heaven and hell, right? Here's a way to live to get blessings of God on your life, if you will. If you want to live that way, don't be a all-the-time liar, a pathological liar, okay? There's some people I've known in life, they'll lie when it doesn't even make sense. I'm like, what are you, why did you just lie about that? It did you no good. Some people are just, I don't know. Do you know anybody like that? It's like, yeah, you're like, what? It's like they can't help themselves. But just to lie about it, So, and I know a lot of kids are funny because there's usually some truth to it, and I'm not even talking about, Alexa does this too, but kids at school and also other kids that I'm around. You'll tell a story, like, I don't know, oh, we were boating one time and our boat broke and we were stranded for 2 hours before we get help. And then the kid that's around, you'll be like, oh yeah, we were boating one time and our boat broke and we were stuck for 4 hours. It's like, okay, you know what I mean? Like whatever story you tell, they're going to have a story that's just a little bit, better than yours and stuff. And it's just funny. So, but he repeats that verse twice about a false witness. So be careful. Again, we all have lied. We all, at times will lie, I'm sure, but do your best not to. All right, verse 10. Delight is not seemly for a fool, much less for a servant to have rule over princes. Now, this one, there's no question here, but just so you know what's going on here. He's talking about a servant to have rule over princes. So it's kind of like, I actually was just talking about this in class today with my students. I started a whole new semester, and so my kids, one of the first lessons I do with them is I show them examples of athletes who have made millions and yet are broke 2 years later, something like that. And there's hundreds of examples of it where they make millions of dollars. And I was just talking about this with AJ and Natalie before church here, and I said, wait till But this is saying a servant to have rule over princes. So if you have someone who's a business person, and they all of a sudden they run a business and they're doing this and that, and then they make a bunch of money, they've done it through learning the process of how to handle and manage a business and all the information and wisdom that comes from handling that, they know how to manage money. But you take like an athlete or someone who wins the lottery, they all of a sudden, they haven't gone through any of the process of learning how to handle their money or their business or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're making millions. They don't know how to, handle that. And a lot of them go broke within, like I said, I think it was the lesson I had today said within 2 years of NFL players retiring, 78% of them either declare bankruptcy or in financial distress. And they make millions. Not all of them, but millions, and some of them make hundreds of thousands. Maybe not millions, but hundreds of thousands. And it's because you go and look, and it's like, So it's not about how much money you make. It's about learning to handle it correctly. Obviously, if you don't have enough, you can't handle it. I get that. You know what I mean? You don't have enough. But a lot of times it's you need a little bit more. You know, I get it. But a lot of times it's just learning to handle it correctly. Okay? All right. That's what verse 10 was. A servant to have rule over princes, right? It's not a good idea because it's kind of like you got to work your way up, if you will, so you get that knowledge along the way. Okay, verse 11. The discretion of a man deferreth his anger, and it is his glory to pass over a transgression. So that's talking about being slow to anger and quick to forgive. Let me say this too. It takes a lot of maturity, and I'm speaking for myself here too. It takes a lot of maturity to not address every little thing said about you. Does that make sense? Like, in other words, you know, you have a lot of these teenagers who haven't matured yet, and then someone's having a conversation over there, not even about, you know, with them, and it's like they're walking away like, what'd you say? You know what I mean? And it's like, just let it go. Well, adults do that too. We all have this tendency to be like, what'd you say? It takes a lot of maturity. You have to understand that. Just let it go. Let God take care of it. Now, sometimes you do have to address things. Don't get me wrong. But my point is, you don't have to go and have a knockdown, drag-out fight over everything that's said, right? You know, if I was walking into my office and I overheard somebody say something about me, if it became a problem where it was like over and over and over again, I would address it. I'm not afraid to address problems. But my point is, you know, be a big enough person to understand that sometimes people will say something and they don't even mean it. It's just kind of like talking about the weather. Like, you know, you walk outside. What's everybody going to say? Every one of you are going to walk out tonight to your car. And what are you going to say? It's cold out here, right? Does that mean I need to warm it up outside? No. It just means you're just talking about the weather. So, you know, well, I'll just use, this is a dumb example, but let me use it. Sunday, I really messed up congregational singing. I mean, that was horrible. I'm not going to do it again, right? It was a mistake on my part. CJ had put those, so the week before, CJ put all those songs in, and then their car wouldn't start. Jerry and Val's car wouldn't start, so we didn't use it. And then, you know, this week, Joey's voice was messed up, and Nick, you know, was like, I don't know that song very well. But I'm like, man, CJ went through that work. Let's just sing it. And I'm like, all right, everybody, turn your hymnals. Wait, what page? It was my bad, right? Yeah, it was my fault, and for looking unorganized. Even though Jerry had them spelled out, CJ had it. It was my fault. And here's my point. Someone probably on Sunday, I didn't hear it, but I'm sure it happened. Somebody probably said, "Man, Pastor Kurt really messed that up." Well, what if I was walking to my office and I overheard it and I was like, "What'd you say? Like, how dare you say?" Like, just it's okay. Now, again, if you're going around dogging the pastor or a teacher or someone else, that's a problem, and I will address it. But I'm saying an off comment, like, it's okay. Let it go, people, right? Same thing, let me use now husbands and wives and relationships, right? How many times a husband or a wife walking away like, and then they mumble something under their breath? Now, me and CJ, I'm not trying to make us sound great, but me and CJ don't do that. We really don't. But I'm saying it happens sometimes with people, and like, what'd you say? Like, just let it go. They just need a second, and your relationship will be better if you just let it go instead of nitpicking everything, okay? Same thing with your kids. Don't let them be disrespectful to you, okay? Don't let them be disrespectful to you. But I'm just saying, let's say the door's shut and behind the door, I don't know. I'm just saying, right? Let's be more mature. What'd you say? Yeah, pick your battles and be more mature than picking at everything, because you won't have peace in your life if you pick at everything. I promise you. All right, any questions or comments about that? Now, let me reiterate. I don't let Alexa, because sometimes I say things and I think people think I'm the worst parent in the world. I swear, I don't think I am. I don't know. Maybe you, I don't know. But I don't let Alexa be disrespectful. I don't want you to think that. I'm just saying in general. Okay, verse 12. So let me address something real quick. Sunday in Sunday school, I said I don't like rules, and somebody asked me about that. You don't like rules? No. What I meant is I follow rules, but if there's a rule that doesn't make sense, I'm going to go challenge it to try and change it. I don't just break the law, okay? But I'm just saying, Like, I'll give you a quick example. I started a softball league, and every softball league I've ever played in, they make you play a game. If you play 2 games, play a game, sit out, and then play another game. Why? Because they want you to, eat, like sit out and eat and buy a lot of stuff at the concession stand. Well, of course, a church league, we didn't want that. So I started this church league, and I go to the park, and I said, we want to play back-to-back doubleheaders. And they're like, no, you can't do that. I'm like, why? And then, so I was like, well, we're not going to play here then. So then I call up another place, and then they said no. So then I go back to the other, anyway, then I got it working. Guess what? We have back-to-back doubleheaders, all right? You don't, you fight for what you think is right. Challenge, yeah. I don't go around breaking the law, right? But if rules are, I'm going to challenge it if it doesn't make sense. Absolutely. Come up with a better rule. We wouldn't have America if it weren't for that. All right, verse 12. The king's wrath is as the roaring of a lion, but his favor is as dew upon the grass. A foolish son is the calamity of his father, and the contentions of a wife are a continual dropping. Question number 5. What is a man's 2 worst nightmares? Yeah, unruly children and a mean wife. Yeah, that is what the verse says. Understand that this is Solomon talking to his son, okay? If he was talking to his daughter, he would say unruly children and a mean husband, okay? But he's talking to a man, so he's going to say unruly children and a mean wife. And that's the truth. Because verse 14 is going to tell you something different. So let's finish verse 13 first. 2 man's worst nightmares, unruly children, and a mean wife. Now let's look at verse 14. House and riches are the inheritance of fathers, and a prudent wife is from the Lord. So a good wife is from the Lord. Now where it says house and riches are the inheritance of fathers, what he's talking about is that's the physical blessings, right? Like your father can leave your children houses and inheritance. But a good woman, a good wife, can only come from the Lord. That's what he's saying. Amen, by the way. A marriage can be made or broken by a good spouse, either way. But yeah, I don't know what it is, but I feel like more men are messed up by finding a bad wife than women are. I don't know. Maybe it's just my perspective. I don't know. Yeah. What I mean by that is I feel like women that at least I've been around hold the standard up higher to find a good man. Versus so many men that I know that in my life, I'm like, man, what kind of standard? Nah, that sounds super judgmental. I'm sorry. Kind of standard. I'm sorry, that was mean. All right, but I'm just saying, like, men and women should hold yourself to a high standard of, hey, like, if you're a respectable woman and you work hard and you good with money and you're godly and whatever. Hold your standard up here. I'm not dating anybody who's not, and if you're a good man, don't date. Like, if you're not a drug addict, don't date a drug addict. Right? Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, you took it there. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, yeah. Yeah. No, right. No, but seriously, hold yourself to a high standard in that, don't date, if you're a woman, don't date a guy who's a jerk just because you think he's attractive. If you're a man, don't date a woman who, isn't a godly woman if just because you think they're attractive or whatever. And I know things happen, but I'm just saying in general, like, and I know, sometimes somebody get them into church and stuff like that. I'm talking about, just over their looks is all you went after. And then it just leads you down a path of, those looks change, eventually, All right. All right. Verse 15. I told you this is going to be a good chapter, right? All right. 15. Excuse me. It says, slothfulness casteth into a deep sleep, and an idle soul shall suffer hunger. He that keepeth the commandment keepeth his own soul, but he that despiseth his ways shall die. He that hath pity upon the poor lendeth unto the Lord, and that which he hath given will he pay him again. Okay, let's stop there. Question 6, I worded a little differently here. I said, I believe our church practices this concept from which verse? Well, verse 17. Let me explain. Solomon is not contradicting himself at all. He's saying that if slothfulness or poor decision-making is what led you into poverty, that's your fault. But if you're working hard and maybe you just fell on hard times and things like that, and that's why you've fallen into poverty, he's saying, look at verse 17, he that hath pity upon the poor lendeth unto the Lord. So if somebody falls upon hard times, not because they're not going to work. Like, listen, if somebody falls on hard times and they're physically able to go to work, but they're just not, I don't want to help them out, right? But if somebody falls upon hard times and they're working hard and doing things right, being faithful to church and doing this and doing that, but they just fall on hard times, our church has done a great job of helping multiple families, and that's a blessing. Number one, to the church, to the people who can help, and the people that's being helped. It's a blessing both ways. Not just to the people being helped. It's also a blessing for us as a church, because look what the Bible says. And that which he hath given will he pay him again. So in other words, kind of like a reap what you sow. Like we're reaping good in helping people, and therefore those people and others are helping the church by being faithful, bringing people to church, getting closer to God. And so I think our church is doing a great job at that. Great job at that. So, does that make sense? So, he's not contradicting himself. You want to help the poor, and God's saying, if you help the poor, you're helping me. But on the other hand, he's saying, but if somebody's just slothful, and that's why they're poor, don't help them. Because that's what verse 15 says, slothfulness, right? That's lazy, is what that's saying. All right, verse 18. Chasten thy son while there's hope. This is a tougher. And let not thy soul spare for his crying. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. I know it's not popular in 2024 or for the last 30 years. No, it's not been popular for a while. But the Bible does talk about correcting your children. And, I was whipped by my parents quite a bit. And way less than my brothers, though, okay? Way less than my brother. But I was whipped quite a bit, and I never, I was crying because it says, let not thy soul spare for his crying. Because in our day and age, we have made, the society as a whole has made it sound like you're evil human beings if you make someone cry or something. It's like, what? Like I cried all the time as a kid when I was getting whipped and, whatever. And I'm a better human being because of it. And it's like, I don't know, obviously there is a line, there's a difference between, correcting your children and just flat out, I'm mad at you, I'm going to beat you, okay? That is clearly wrong. But I personally believe our society is way worse off because of less people spanking their kids. Now, you parent how you want to, but, I think spanked kids are better. Do I have evidence for that? Well, I mean, not really, but again, there's a difference too. Like, I'll just tell you like that. Yeah, evidence. There we go. All of us that are 30 and older, or Trevor, how old are you? 23. There you go. All of us 30 and older, and then those with good parents. No, I'm just kidding. Man, sorry. Every time I go to laugh, it makes me do that. So. But anyways, like I said, I know, especially as a school teacher in the school system, I'm like the outcast. I mean, just whatever. But the point is this. The Bible says to correct your children, and when you don't, you're just setting them up for thinking everything goes. And listen, it's not loving to let them, to never correct your kids, because then they're going to grow up and get a girlfriend or a boyfriend and just be so selfish that they're going to be the worst husband or wife ever, really. I mean, they just will. And then they're going to be 30 and in jail because now they didn't get their way, and then they beat their kid because they weren't spanked. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. But you get what I'm saying. They're not going to learn what they need to learn. So, all right, verse 19. What'd you say? Yeah, they don't get a backhand. That's right. So, but yeah, obviously there's a line you can cross. And one of the things that I try and live by, again, I am not the perfect parenting model. Most of you think I'm the worst parent, but one thing I try to do with Alexa is I try and make sure that, now she's getting older, I don't really spank her anymore, but when she was, we do other things now. But when she was younger, I spanked her, and occasionally still. But what I try and do is make sure that there's a line that it's like, okay, Alexa, if you cross this line, here's the punishment. That way I'm not like holding it in until I'm so bad, let me, because then it's like, I might beat her if I wait until then, So, but I think it's important, so all joking aside, I think it's important that you like set a standard that here's what it is, and if you cross that, then you're going to have a punishment, rather than bottling it in and then waiting till you explode. Because then you might beat them, and that's not what the Bible is telling you to do, for sure. All right, any questions or comments? I'm sorry. Yeah, please. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Sheila. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, you're looking at, I'm 38. My parents spanked us, as kids, and I didn't hate them or regret them or resent them, and all these things. And I have a great relationship with my parents, and again, I think I'm better off because of it. I know there's some people who were spanked and then they get older, but I personally, I don't have like empirical evidence or data to back this up, but I personally think it's because in schools and in society at whole, it's just pounded into kids. If your parents spank you, they're evil and they're the worst, and you were just, abused as a kid, and then they believe it. You tell somebody something enough, they'll believe it. I don't know. That's my personal opinion. Take it for his word. Jason. Yeah, right, yeah. That's true. Right. Yeah. Anybody else? Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and listen, I don't want this, if anybody has been divorced or anything like that, I don't want this to sound unloving, because it's not. It's not at all. But I think one of the issues is that a lot of parents who are divorced, they don't want to discipline their kid, because then if they go, say like if me and CJ were divorced and I only had Alexa on the weekends, for example, I wouldn't want to discipline her, because most of the time when you're divorced, the husband and wife are at each other's throats. So they want to be the cool parent, so they'll be like, I like dad more than I like mom, so they don't want to discipline them at all, and they just want to give them, so that way they can be like, I'm the cooler parent, you like me more. You know what I mean? Like that whole dynamic. And then if you do discipline them, then the kid can say, well, I'm just going back to mom's or whatever. And then they go to mom and be like, Dad, spank me. And then the mom, who already hates the dad because they divorced and think they're terrible, is like, yeah, he's evil, isn't he? You know what I mean? It's just like no judgment on anybody, because I know things happen. I'm just saying I really think that's been a problem in society, because I've seen it where kids are like, like kids will live with their mom and then they'll go to their dad's, and the next thing you know, they're not going to their dad's. Why? Well, because he took away my phone. They don't go to dad's anymore because dad took away the phone, or mom took away the phone, or whatever. And then these kids, and then, you see these kids have all this new stuff, and it's like, where'd you get that? Well, my mom bought me this, and then 2 days later, well, my dad bought me this bigger thing, because they went to their dad's house, and dad's trying to outdo mom, and things like that. So just really pray for kids, you know what I mean? Be involved in kids' lives. Yeah. Right. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. It is a tough world we live in, and that's why you need to be in the Word, be in prayer. And if you know of any children, especially children that have troubled homes, and if you have kids, really take them in with your kids. If I mean, I understand there's a risk of bad influences and stuff, but as a parent, just use your discretion. But if you can bring that kid in and stuff, think about that, because it's tough. It is tough. So yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. Yeah, absolutely. Now, again, no judgment, but let me just give an example to illustrate this. Someone who Alexa knows, because I'm on live stream, I don't want to be more specific there. Someone that Alexa knows, a kid, I'm saying, parents are divorced, recently divorced, and for Christmas, this 9-year-old got an iPhone, like a brand new iPhone. And Alexa's like, so-and-so has an iPhone. And I'm like, okay. Well, did I get an iPhone? No, you're not getting an iPhone. Well, why not? Because I don't want you to be able to surf the internet. I don't want you to be able to do this. I don't want you to do that. And then, I was like, well, who got them the iPhone? Oh, their dad. Why'd they get that? Oh, because her mom got her mom got her an Apple Watch. And then dad had to outdo it. And this 9-year-old has an Apple Watch and an iPhone. Oh my, I'm like, no, Alexa, no. Now, we did want to have a phone for Alexa to be able to call us, because now that she's 10, like sometimes we'll run to the grocery store real quick or whatever. So we bought a house phone. So we ordered a cordless phone. Everybody knows a cordless phone, right? So it was so funny. The Bible says, provoke not your children to wrath. I couldn't help it. So when Alexa was like, I want a phone, I want a phone, I was like, CJ, order that phone. And then it comes, through Amazon. It comes on the door. I was like, Alexa, go outside. I got you a phone. She opens it up, and she's like, what is that? It was the funniest thing. It was one of the joys of parenting. No, but it was really funny. It was really funny. You should ask her about it. But we have a house phone now. I haven't had a house phone in 15 years. No joke. I haven't had a house phone. But we bought her one because we'll go to the grocery store and be like, hey, we're going to be back in a half hour or whatever. But we didn't want to leave Alexa without a way to. If you're judging me for leaving my 10-year-old, I'm sorry. But if you know Alexa, you know that she'll go to our neighbor who we know very, very, very well if she needed anything. Like, okay, I better go on. You're judging me. We have a house phone, though. We have a house phone. Not an iPhone, a house phone. Verse 19. A man of great wrath shall suffer punishment, for if thou deliver him, yet thou must do it again. All right, question number 7. What principle is this verse teaching? Well, you can't help someone who doesn't, finish the sentence, want to help themselves. Because notice what it says. A man of great wrath shall suffer punishment, for if thou deliver him, you're going to have to do it again. Right? I hate that it's that way, because someone who is an addict, or in this case it says great wrath, right? Someone who beats their wife, right? Oh, I forgive you, honey, and he'll do it again, right? Someone who's a drug addict, until they want to help themselves, is my point. God will help them, but they have to want to help themselves. In other words, accept the help. If you just give them the help when they're not ready to help themselves, it won't do them any good. And that's what that is teaching. Okay, verse 20. It says, hear counsel and receive instruction, that thou mayest be wise in thy latter end. There are many devices in a man's heart, nevertheless, the counsel of the Lord, that shall stand. Amen. Question number 8. What will end up standing in the end? The counsel of the Lord. If the Bible gives counsel on some, now I know there's some areas where you're like, but the Bible, how do I apply the Bible in this situation? I understand sometimes you need a little bit of guidance for that, but when the Bible's pretty clear on things, that will stand, okay? Don't go against that. Now, the next part of the question says, what's a good cross-reference for this? Just write down Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 to 6. And that's the one, we already went through that in Proverbs, obviously, right? But that's the one that says, lean not unto your own understanding. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. So I felt that was a good cross-reference for God's counsel, right? Don't trust in your own things. Trust not in your own things, but lean on the Lord. Okay? All right, verse 22. The desire of a man is his kindness, and a poor man is better than a liar. Yeah, it's better to be poor than be a liar. Amen? The fear of the Lord tendeth to life, and he that hath it shall abide satisfied. He shall not be visited with evil. A slothful man hideth his hand in his bosom, and will not so much as bring it to his mouth again. Okay, question number 9 says, talking about verse 24, this is in direct contrast to verse 17, meaning what? We kind of already discussed it, but verse 17 is someone who's poor not because of their slothfulness, right? And then verse 24 says, a slothful man, right? And will not so much as bring it to his mouth again. It's saying he's so lazy, he won't even bring up his hand to his mouth. Like that's what it's saying. Okay? So listen, we're not talking about, handicapped people or something. You know what I mean? We're not talking about that. We're talking about someone who's able-bodied and just will not work. All right, verse 25. Smite a scorner, and the simple will beware, and reprove one that hath understanding, and he will understand knowledge. He that wasteth his father and chaseth away his mother is a son that causeth shame and bringeth reproach. All right, question number 10, I asked. We got 2 left here. Who is it that causes shame and brings reproach? Well, one that wastes his father and chases an unruly child. Okay, if we want to put it in our way, an unruly child. So see, again, written from the male perspective, because it's Solomon writing to his son, right? Wasteth his father and chaseth away his mother is an unruly child. And by the way, whenever you look at it in context, the wording wasteth his father, because back in this time period, the kids would get inheritance. I mean, we get that today, but it's a little bit different. Like back in this time period, they would get their inheritance before people would die even, okay? Like the prodigal son. Everybody probably is familiar with that story, where the prodigal son said, give me my inheritance. And what did he do with it? He went and wasted it with riotous living. That's what this is saying. If you waste your father's, if he wasted his father, that's what that's describing. That's describing an ungrateful child, right? Someone who's like, oh, you giving me all this stuff? Thanks, and then just throws it away. That's being ungrateful, right? Okay, verse 27, we're almost done. Cease, my son, to hear the instruction that causeth to err from the words of knowledge. An ungodly witness scorneth judgment, and the mouth of the wicked devoureth iniquity. Judgments are prepared for scorners, and stripes for the back of fools. Now, that's pretty intense, but question 11 says, what is prepared for the back of fools? Stripes. Yeah, back in this time period, what would they do? Publicly flog people. You know what I mean? Give them stripes on the back, right? Now, I don't know if we should do it maybe like that, but the principle remains. The principle is when somebody does something deserving of being punished, they should get punished, right? If somebody steals, they should be punished for that. If somebody lies, they should be punished for that. It's like having your kid. If you have a 3-year-old and you never punish that 3-year-old or that 4-year-old or that 5-year-old or that 6-year-old, you're going to have a teenager that doesn't know what it means to be corrected. They're the ones, that's on TV where the cops pull them over and they say, well, I didn't do anything, like, because they've never been corrected a day in their life, right? And, that's a problem. So that's what it's talking about. Like, it's good to have mercy, you know what I mean? Like, have mercy and forgiveness, don't get me wrong. But you can't, Jesus, the Bible says he's grace and truth. He's mercy, but he's also judgment. You have to balance that with people, with your kids, with your spouse, whatever. You can't just be mercy and forgiveness because no one will ever learn, right? I'm not talking about in God's way. That's a different story. But in our lives, you can't just forgive everything because then no one will ever learn. So what I mean is without a punishment of some sort, okay? All right, any questions over Proverbs chapter 19? Hope you guys enjoyed that. We're back at it for Wednesdays now for, we won't till December, I guess. We'll have some Wednesdays, like obviously in the summer, VBS and that. But yeah. Oh, I'll say this, and then we'll close in prayer. Pray about. I was wanting some another outreach or two on the church calendar this year. Like we have the fall festival, we have Vacation Bible School. Well, I was wanting to do one at least. Oh, and the Easter thing that we do, but they haven't set the date for that yet at the park. And but I was wanting to do like another community outreach for our church. Well, Jamie Light was talking to me, and so anyways, we're in the works of, we're going to do like an outdoorsman type outreach event where we'll have it hosted here and we'll invite the community, and Jamie's going to set up like archery and shooting and stuff like that. And then, and just like have some food and then preach to the people and stuff like that. So we're working on the details and the date. We're going to do sometime in the spring. So be in prayer about that. Around here, Goshen, Blanchester, Clinton, Massey, whatever, Clarksville. I'm sure we'll get, people who like the outdoors.